Hello, it is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023 at exactly 1400 hours USA Eastern Time. This is my video journal. I'm Mitch Miller, and otherwise known as Kill Switch Mitch, aka Kill Switch Mitch, aka Dead Eddie. So I was thinking of this kill switch, how every vehicle has a kill switch for its head unit, for its radio. Who knows how the auto manufacturers incorporate the video technology and the sensors in with the radio and satellite radio. Obviously we could lobby for better restrictions if I worked for the FCC or something like that, about Wi-Fi antennas, Bluetooth antennas, how they're wired, so that people with schizophrenia, people that work for the government that don't want corporations to spy on them, can easily pull a couple fuses and still have functionality of the vehicle. And so I was thinking about this kill switch, these fuses, and it could just be a fuse housing with a little toggle pull button that sticks out above the fuse. The fuse could be a little longer than normal fuses. Little button so that when you reach under to feel the fuse box, you can feel that button if you're driving, and you can pull the little toggle out and it takes the fuse out of service, but the housing and everything stays in the fuse connection so that you don't lose a fuse. If you're pulling fuses, you might lose the fuse. You know, this keeps everything in-house. So we can design these, we can patent these if we want. We could just make them without a patent. I could probably make them in my dad's garage or something, and we could make these and offer them to government employees until someone figures out that we made them, and then we'd have to go to the public. But strategically at first we could just do government employees. That would reduce reliance on intelligence agencies to protect every government employee's vehicle, and it would keep, the government can't afford to spy on everyone. It's probably not the government spying on the military and government officials. More than likely it's a corporation, and these private corporations, these publicly traded corporations, have access to all of our vehicles, all of our phones, and things like that. If you're sick of it, call Kill Switch Mitch. We'll get you figured out. For now, I can just put a gator clip and mark where it goes into place, and we can pull these if you want to have conversations about wrestling matches or pistol duels. So that's how that's all I'm going to get off my chest there at the beginning here. But I said I would talk about computer technology, artificial intelligence, and supercomputers, how far back they reach. And I envision this as a screenplay. I envision this as the beginning of a movie. But I said in Denmark, I made a video where I said, Bill Gates, get all of those video game modulators off of the internet. And the reason I said this is that people have been playing video games on computer equipment since the dawn, pretty much, of computer equipment. So I grew up with an MS-DOS computer, and that, I know that stands for Microsoft operating system, whatever, direct operating system, whatever it stands for. But in my mind, sometimes when I was in prison and stuff, I thought of it as Miss DOS, Miss Department of State. When the Department of State has an equal amount of females as males, some of these people will be activated. And what I'm talking about is, we played on these video games, we played on these old computers, and that was fine when they brought out the Nintendo video game modulators. But when you started getting into the DOS, the old computer games, I think you started to unveil certain people who may become activated as psyops, as some people term them. I don't like that term. I just think when you centralize all intelligence you're going to have people who can pick up on that and who might become kind of activated. So these video games, we only had a few. Maybe they were distributed to former Navy personnel, former military personnel. Somehow they found their hands into their kids' computer systems back in the late 80s, 90s. They took discs, and so how far did the computers reach back? We had satellites back then in the 80s. They were taking pictures using CRT cameras, cathode ray tube cameras, and that's where I initially developed this theory, is that when they took a picture, it shot electrons down onto the surface of the Earth. But there were communication satellites that shot beams of communication signal down onto the Earth. And were we monitoring all these things all the time and in control rooms? Probably, but did somebody fall asleep behind the control room in the middle of the night when we weren't really broadcasting television? Were supercomputers able to reach back through time, as I explain in my novel M, how they can reach across dimensions, reach back in time, alter where a communication satellite is pointed, and send a signal without anyone noticing? Could they reach back into the 80s, the late 70s, because we were incorporating computer technology, and were they able to program humans back then? And so here's the theory, and the reason I'm coming to this is I can hear interference in my clock next to my bedroom. These are little circuit boards, right? And they're in my clock. Now, I bought that clock used in a thrift store because it did not have a radio feature. It has no antenna. It's just a clock, but I can hear feedback coming from that. I can hear a noise coming as if there's interference, if something's blasting off of these little connectors. And the appliances right underneath that in the kitchen, below my bedroom, the appliances there, the clocks are resetting and stuff. Now, I take that as a sign that some billionaire has a satellite with some kind of energy beam pointing at my house, pointing at my bedroom, trying to keep me up at night. It could be that just the chip in the clock went bad over time, I guess, but when I bought it, it did not emit this noise. So the theory here is that you have computers that you fed disks in with magnetic disks spinning inside of it. And these satellites, even back in the 70s and 80s, could shoot a beam down onto a regular house where somebody left a disk in the computer when they shut it down. And so it was flat, and the beams of energy work their way down through the disk drive and hit certain spots on the disk with certain intensities, or they hit these and blow out a certain connection on a chip. But the point is that the game, the disk, the program, it altered it. The computers were able to alter it, and the most they could do is make it freeze. Make the game unsolvable. Make the game freeze up at a certain point so that you cannot complete the entire game. And by doing this, you have people like me that would play the game over and over and over again and get to that point and say, what can I do different? And you can never get past that point. And for some of us, it put us on the path to prevent thermonuclear war and put us on track for disarmament on a scale that could bring us to hypothetically total and complete disarmament of all weapons of mass destruction on planet Earth. So these games freeze, and they're complex games for that simple of a computer system, and people tried different strategies, but they couldn't make it past that point. So, some of these games came with instruction manuals with diagrams and things like that that started you off. But the point is that you have all these, and unfortunately it's mostly males that played these video games because they're introduced to computer technology at a higher rate than females. But all over the world you have these males that played, that are my age, a little older, a little younger, that played these video games, and something in their brains is kind of like switched, and they've been programmed by supercomputers in a way, and so they get thrown into a solitary confinement cell and they just keep racking their brain for information. That's what happened. But then you brought these modulators out and you have all the old MS-DOS games on just the internet, and so you have these corporate families, as I've explained. I married into a corporate family, and my spouse, when those modulators came out, she told me about it. She set it up on the computer that was here before, another Apple computer, and out of just instinct, I was like, I wonder if they have that game, and I clicked on it to see if they had the game, and that's giving up information. That's giving up. Who knows how that game got in my possession back in the 80s, but it's giving up intel, and the corporations are trying to see who these people, who these son-in-laws, who these people, what they did to kind of think this way, to develop this way, and to operate in a manner in which they operate. And so, in a way, my wife was kind of like a spy getting intelligence out of me, and it was just like a switch in my mind. I just had to see if the game was there. And so her ex-boyfriend that might have hacked the computer could see that. Who knows what intelligence agencies could see, what games I used to play on MS-DOS. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that these supercomputers, this artificial intelligence, could have reached back in the 70s and 80s and manipulated different disks in computers, in domestic households, in order to kind of program a generation of people who would put us on a course for a better future. And you shouldn't try to grill those people for all the information about everything they did in their childhood and what interfaces they had with computers to cause them to think that way. We should keep those hidden. That's why I wanted to get the modulators off of the internet, because every day somebody clicks on an old game, somebody my age clicks on an old game that they played that was obscure, that came out of California, that who knows how it was manipulated. And this could have happened with Nintendo's too. The game could have froze, glitches and freezes interacted with us at a young age and caused us to become kind of programmed by computers. So that's what I wanted to talk about. If you take my evidence that a satellite's pointed at my bedroom, I know I sound schizophrenic and crazy. That's why nobody takes me seriously, but just wanted to talk a little bit about this. Bill Gates, I'm happy to talk with you more about this theory if you want to meet with me, but I don't think any billionaires want to support my agenda or my programs, because I want prosperity for the entire planet instead of just a few rich people, and we're going to get there eventually. The last thing I'll say, and I know it sounds kind of schizophrenic, but you think about names. So MS-DOS, Mrs. Department of State. You also have who gave me my first job at age 10, Doc Marshall. Lived down the street, lived in Utica, major force in Utica, major landowner in Utica. Doc Marshall. You start thinking about the initials, you start thinking about the name. Department of Corrections, Doc, where my father ended up working actually, and how these computer interfaces these old computer interfaces, Department of Corrections, Department of State, how these games got released, how these computer systems got released. And then you have Doc Marshall, Department of Corrections Marshall. On my way back from Denmark, I developed some strategies and ideas for the Air Marshal program. So I developed that in a prison and stuff like that. So way things interact, where computers could reach back into your history, and you have to think about the interconnectedness and how these computers could have been manipulating and programming you at a very young age, because the powers that be wanted to incorporate computer technology into everything. Then they created supercomputers and artificial intelligence, and my theory is that they are able to reach back in time, or they were at one point, where it was autonomous a lot earlier than what we thought, and how that affects the population at large. Hopefully there's a lot more people like me that want to get us away from thermonuclear war and put us on the path of disarmament. So thanks for watching. Join me probably next week sometime. I'll think of something else to talk about. Call me up if you want kill switches, and let's get this program off the ground. Thanks.